this is gonna be a little bit petty because Mirta is currently literally making a video about one singular post that one singular person has made, and they have put out quite a lot of opinion into their post, but part of their post has really shocked me and made me realize that a lot of people have never encountered games in the cozy genre that are not inherently cozy underneath. And they have also probably have never encountered juxtaposed media when that is kind of what I grew up on and kind of what I'm really used to. So, in order to preserve the anonymity of the poster, and also if you dig through my post history, you'll have to go back weeks by this point, so don't do that. In order to preserve everything that they want to have on the internet, including their privacy, I would assume, I just took the excerpt that I want to talk about, and I'm not gonna say the poster's username or where they posted this or the rest of the post. We're just gonna talk about this one little bit that has really shocked me because they're taking this as a negative. Ludonarrative dissonance. The term basically means that the gameplay and the story atmosphere clash instead of harmonize. The start of the game was mostly in harmony, or at least not working against itself. The story was relatively light, very cute fluff type stuff, and the animations and gameplay matched that quite well. Nikki would catch fish and be surprised and happy that she caught it, like she was still learning, or groom this game's version of a puppy in adorable detail. It all sort of worked, including things like the absolutely terrible writing, Nikki's childish voice, or the very often overly simplistic puzzles and storylines. Everything just came off as cute and childish. However, we very soon ran into things like the poor orphan girl that we can't help at all, the war refugees, Philomea's tyrannical rule, as we were first introduced to her, etc. And still the gameplay is cutesy. The world just brushes these things off. It acknowledges them at all, it really starts to give you whiplash. This has only got worse over the game's life. 2.5 improved on that dissonance a tiny bit. We were still catching bugs with a comically oversized net and exclaiming in glee on catching our 4,000th fish, even though Nikki should be relatively good at it by now. But we were also helping in more grounded ways. We ferried souls to the afterlife, we made medicine for the sick, etc. So while 2.5 still definitely had its moments, it showed improvement. 2.6 had the best dungeon that this game has ever produced, and the most ludonarratively harmonious. The music, the voice lines, the gameplay, the visuals all worked to accentuate and add to the story, rather than to clash with it. It's the best this whole game has ever been, and for the first time since the very beginning of Wishfield, the game actually made me feel something. Then 2.8 has a character die in front of us and straight afterward there's a Whimstar to catch with its ridiculous carnival music. The game doesn't even give us time. So often the gameplay works to undermine or outright destroy any tone, plot point, meaning or message more serious or mature than teehee, friendship is magic. I also encountered one person in the comment that was saying that Infinity Nikki is giving them trust issues, and that they already have enough trust issues in their life, and that they don't appreciate being deceived by the game. And for a tiny bit of time, I felt like I was in a completely different planet, because I'm very used to games juxtaposing the overly cute atmosphere with something kinda horrible, and in fact, just media in general doing it, and fan bases doing it too. The things that come the most to mind is fan creation for My Little Pony called Rainbow Factory. It's a music video with a full animation that includes, spoiler, making rainbows out of ponies. This is a fan base for a children's cartoon that, for all intents and means, is incredibly family friendly and very much puppies and rainbows sort of experience. Happy Tree Friends is something that I grew up with. It's a very soft animation in the style of what would be an innocent child's cartoon, except that it's effectively media that are shorts, and every single episode includes somebody getting brutally murdered, mutilated, most often than not on accident. For example, one of the storylines included a dad shaving his son's head, and the son is a baby. And they're both animals, by the way, because, well, cute animals. And something happens to the shaver, so it no longer, works, and it's an electric one. So the dad goes off to, check its cord about, whether it may be unplugged from the socket, and in the meanwhile, the child puts that in his mouth. And you can guess what happens when that thing turns back on, when the father actually, plugs it into the socket. Yep, those are the kind of storylines that Happy Tree Friends used to present. Or how about Doki Doki Literature Club? A game that's trying to be all cutesy and friendly until it turns into a full horror experience. Or how about half of the MMOs ever created having fairly colorful and friendly open world environments that then can throw you into a loop by pushing you into a story instance where a lot of really bad shit will happen, and then you're gonna come back out into a colorful environment. Of course, some MMOs use environment phasing, so if a war started in a cutscene, then the map that you exited into will be different than the map that you entered from, and only the people that have completed the story can see your version of the map effectively. So only the people that are at the same story beat can see each other in a specific map made for the story beat that's different from how the map looks regularly. But very few MMOs actually fully employ that, mostly because it kind of interrupts the play together element. So it is a lot more common to just have a very outlandish story beat and then go back into your regular environment. Or how about the fact that Life Makeover, as a game that's also dress up and made for women, is murder, murder, murder in every single direction possible. I'm used to whiplash in media in general, and I honestly almost consider it to be an interesting storytelling device, and almost like something that adds to the atmosphere in itself. The most depressing songs can be very upbeat, for example. You know Bad Apple? Everybody likes Bad Apple, but Bad Apple is an incredibly depressive song. And it's also fun to dance to. It's the juxtaposition that gets me, and I find it to be so incredibly genius as a storytelling device. For it is something that you don't expect, and it's almost like giving onion its layers. You get a happy layer and you get an actual story underneath, and those two layers clash, right? But at the same time, it creates a very interesting full-on picture. So when I see somebody not connecting the rather comforting gameplay to the rather dramatic story, it's giving me a pause, because I'm not used to people expecting overly straightforward games in what could be considered adult media. I think that we're all very complex individuals, so the kind of games that we tend to gravitate toward tend to have more than one flavor. Unless, of course, you just need to chill. In that case, of course, people can gravitate to cozy, which just makes me question, is this like a generational divide and disconnect? The person not grew up with the same media that I did, which is very much possible. Is this not something that's expected anymore? And are people actually feeling deceived coming into Infinity Nikki? I know that at some point Infinity Nikki dropped cozy from their description, probably because of reasons like these. It's giving people disconnect, it's not something that they have expected, and they get upset by that. So, I don't know how to solve this issue. I almost feel like the best that you could do would be to put disconnect into your advertisement to show the juxtaposition of what the game is. And it's not very hard to find the juxtaposition in the game. You encounter it in the story beats in 1.0 fairly early on, honestly. But also, have you just sat down and read the descriptions of items in your clothes? Normally, they're pretty metal to a point where you could confuse descriptions from Infinity Nikki to descriptions from Dark Souls. And I find that any player that has been there for Love Nikki and Shining Nikki kinda expects that. They kinda expect the real darkness to be underneath, but anyone coming into Infinity Nikki as a new player might not realize that not everything is cheery in Wonderland, for a lack of a better word. And the only thing that I can think of is to put this as a selling point. But at the same time, if you do, it kind of ruins the surprise a little. I find that the veterans of the game are kind of used to this. They're also kind of used to other bits of the game, like this person doesn't really like the way that Nikki acts, or her empty-headedness at points, or the way that she talks as well. But it almost adds charm to it. Her what could actually be bad writing moments just kind of give a bit of a comic relief. At the same time, paint Nikki as being a bit airheaded at times, which goes at anything from being so disconnected that your reaction to Prisoners in the Cage being, oh wow, I got inspiration for Wishful Orosa's shoes, to literal brain farts where somebody just like comes in and introduces themselves by their name. Hi, I'm Click. And then Nikki goes, is your name Click? No shit, Nikki. What's happening in your brain case over there? But at the same time, these kind of moments, to me, they add charm, while to other people, they read as bad game design. That's really throwing me off. Are you guys used to media doing this? This effectively would be my question. Is this a generational thing? Has Generation Z and below that just did not grow up with a lot of deceptively sweet media with darker notes underneath? Is this first time playing a live service game issue as well? Because now that I think about it, gachas tend to be very dramatic, and you're gonna find this kind of narratively disconnecting experience in a lot of multiplayer games too. If you want a secondary narrative disconnective experience, try playing an MMO where every player can look like the most sparkly snowflake ever existing, and like walk into a very well-themed city and then just like see all of the players around that absolutely do not fit the vibe. That will always throw you off, but also I remember these kind of things as a good memory. So for me, the statements of this game is bad because there are multiple juxtaposed themes and because gameplay is very much disconnected from the narrative that they're trying to tell at the moment, they really throw me off because it's one thing that I don't actually want the game to change. I like its vibe. And it's a vibe, effectively. And I'm just wondering, am I the weird one? Do I just not connect with the youth? Is that it? So, if you could change anything about Nikki, gameplay and narrative-wise, when it comes to these kind of vibes, what would it be? And how do you think the game could present itself better in order to not end up with disappointed customers that didn't quite like how the game continued going? Is effectively what I'm trying to say. So yeah, this was weird. I'm kinda stunned. What are your opinions about it? Thank you for watching. Thank you so much for my Patreon supporters. And I'm gonna come back with a bit less niche subjects than this. I thought that this is kind of interesting. At least it was for me, because it made me reevaluate the kind of media that I grew up with and what I value. I guess I like onions because layers are my thing. Anyway, thank you for watching. Toodaloo for now.